वुमेन, आप सभी का स्वागत करता हूँ और अभिनंदन करता हूँ। इट्स अ गुड अपॉर्चुनिटी। आज हम बहुत एक अच्छे मौके पर एक बेहतरीन ऑथर के साथ बातचीत करने के लिए यहाँ इकट्ठे हुए हैं। तो मुझे एक छोटी सी जिम्मेदारी दी गई है कि प्रोग्राम को इनिशिएट करने के लिए मैं आप सभी के सामने पहले मुखातिब हूँ और फिर हम आज के इस पूरे डिस्कशन में रहेंगे। तो मैं छोटा सा रोल कल्पना मैम के बिहाफ में यहाँ पर आप सभी के सामने प्रेजेंट कर रहा हूँ। मुझे ख्याल से अमित जी आ चुके हैं। अमित जी हमारे बीच आ गए, एक बार देख लेते हैं। So, good evening everyone. I'm Gaurav Virja Shukla on behalf of SAS Women of Raipur and the entire Prabhaketan Foundation family. Welcome you all to the yet another edition of the Right Circle in our city. SAS is an initiative of Prabhaketan Foundation and it is a conglomeration of women from all walks of life who contribute in their own ways and inspires others for the betterment of the society. SAS women have their presence in a number of cities now. They, with their firm local presence, have proven to be a strong arm of Prabhaketan Foundation. Prabhaketan Foundation has worked relentlessly over the years to promote literature, art and culture and bring it to the forefront of the society. The foundation has its presence not only pan-India but over abroad. The Right Circle is one such initiative of the foundation that aims at bridging the gap between the author and her readers. The Right Circle is presented by Shri Simen in association with Hayat Raipur and brought to you by SAS Women of Raipur. None of this would have been possible without our committed association like Hayat Raipur and the Shri Simen. And as we all know, we have gathered here today for our esteemed guest, Ms. Nidhi Dugar Kundalia. And in conversation with Ms. Kundalia, we have with us fellow SAS woman, Srishti Trivedi. So let's give them a great round of applause. Srishti is a lawyer turned entrepreneur and founder of Project Get Out, a local community venture and a fellow SAS woman. And now for our guest of honor, we are extremely fortunate to have with us Ms. Nidhi Dugar Kundalia, who has written 2 bestsellers that focus mainly on subcultures and cultural oddities and societies. Ms. Kundalia is based in Kolkata, and today we are privileged to be present for this discussion of not just Ms. Kundalia's book but also her other interests and life in general. So welcome to Raipur, Nidhi ma'am. आपका बहुत-बहुत स्वागत है. And अमित जी हमारे बीच हैं. अमित जी आ जाएं और मैं जो भी गेस्ट आ रहे हैं उनको भी कहूँगा कि please take your seats so that we can start this initiative. So, प्रभाकेतान फाउंडेशन के बिहाफ में, SAS वुमेन रायपुर के बिहाफ में और ऑर्गेनाइजिंग टीम की तरफ से मैं आप सभी का वेलकम करता हूं और अब ये स्टेज निधि जी को और सृष्टि जी को सौंपते हैं ताकि हम लोग इनके सुंदर बातचीत और डिस्कशन को हम लोग आनंद लेंगे और फिर इस सेशन के बाद में आप सभी के लिए क्वेश्चन आंसर का भी एक सेशन ओपन होगा एट द एंड ऑफ दिस सेशन. थैंक यू सो मच एंड वेलकम.
Thank you so much, Gaurav sir. Okay, so I just want to start with something that Hindustan Times wrote about Nidhi's book. Just to give you an idea what the book is about. It's an uncommon narrative about 6 tribes of India, including the Halakis, Kanjars, Kurumbas, Marias, Khasis, and the Konyaks. This book constructs an uncommon narrative about their emotional conflict with changing reality. So, Nidhi ji, first of all, what I want to know is that you are a journalist, and then you became an author. So, when did you first realize that you want to be an author? When did the first inspiration struck?
Thankfully nothing that I have done in my life has been planned. everything has been sheer coincidence and mere luck. So this happened. So basically, I was a commerce graduate, and because I did not know what else to do, I was pursuing commerce at a college in Hyderabad, and that's when there was an opening at a newspaper, and I started working with them. And then one newspaper, because college was so dreadfully boring, I ended up doing one internship after the other to make up for all that I had lost by not doing better courses. And and then somewhere along the way, I moved to London and then to Calcutta. In Calcutta, I used to work with a magazine after stints with Indian Express, Hindustan Times, Hindu, India Today, and a lot of other publications. I moved to Calcutta. And I started working with this magazine called Kindle, which was essentially a long form narrative magazine. And there I used to write a column called The Lost Generation. And somebody from Penguin noticed that column and they decided to commission it in form of a book. I never intended to be an author. It was merely coincidence that I ended up doing what I'm doing right now.
Well, that's beautiful. I think it was quite, maybe you were not intentional, but you were mindful about it, like you were moving in a direction. Wow. So, tell us something about the early years of your life, and along with it, how does it feel? Like you said, you are settled in Kolkata now. So how does it feel putting down your roots there?
So basically, all along throughout my journey, I have always been dictated by the word. I have been very, very closely, like I used to find a lot of solace in this incredible library at a club that we were members of. And the library boasted of journals and magazines from around the world. And I would be like immersed, I would be in those libraries for like hours, spending week after week, going through those journals along with a lot of these military retired men who would be like falling asleep over their newspapers. And I think that's when my relationship with the written word started. And then came blogs and a lot of other things. But somewhere along the way, I also got very interested in anthropology, the subject itself. And I ended up reading a lot of journals, books. I subscribed to a lot of books, and Hyderabad had like all these old my parents' friends who were into mapping and who were geologists, and some who have had their roots in Hyderabad since the time of the Nawabs, and so there was a lot of exposure there. Even with all the newspapers that I've been working with, or the magazines that I've been working with, my subjects have always been the fringe society, whether it is LGBT, whether it is women of Sonagachi, or it is a museum of sex in New York, or just everything that I could lay my hands on that helped me understand how an Indian has evolved post-independence. And that's how I chanced upon the tribals of, anyway, I'm sure we'll cover that subject in the next question.
So it all started from Hyderabad.
Yeah, and then of course, I ended up in Calcutta, and Calcutta was a sensory overload. I have grown up in Hyderabad, which is a very cosmetically beautiful city. But in Calcutta, that layer that exists between everything from the deculling of the chicken to the roasting of the chicken happens before you. Everything, you have the same street has a slum, a millionaire of Calcutta living together, and then you'll find a boutique, and then you'll find a kirana shop. It's all in the same street. This whole intermingling of things, the old existing with the new, the history with modern structures, old art forms as well as new, everything. The city is stuck in time. You walk through the lanes, you walk through the. I'm getting goosebumps. I'm speaking about it. But the city is stuck in time, and and you can't help but be stuck in time too, and just slow down and absorb how things are moving and notice how things have evolved, and it becomes very, very clear somehow. And that's how my first book happened, The Lost Generation. Because then suddenly I'm walking through old streets of Calcutta, and I see a bishti wala, then I see an ittar wala, then I see a ear cleaner, then I see a street dentist, and I'm like, hey, like this is going to go before me. These are the things that my grandparents used to talk about. There was this. My grandma used to open this old Godrej Almira, and things would just tumble out of that. There would be like this ear cleaner which she used to clean my dad's ear with. There were borders of gold and silver zari. There was this old Singer sewing machine, and she used to tell me about the lamp, the lamp lighter who would come every evening, switch on the lights, switch on the lamps with this big pole and fire at the end of it, then come back in the morning, switch the lights off. Then there would be a rat catcher who would come and take these rats away. Then there was this panda. When my grandfather passed away, we went to Haridwar and we recorded his death. I forced myself as a part of the group that was the men of my family, and I went with them, and I realized, hey, these are my 9 generations, unfortunately only men, recorded in that. And this is genealogy. These are genealogists. Why do I not know more about them? Why do people not know more about them? And that's how my column started happening, and that's what led to the book ultimately. The first book called The Lost Generation.
I love the analogy of it, like your journey and how your books came into existence. I love it. So all these transitions have been translated into the book that you wrote. So first, I want to talk about this book. You'll all get the copy. I just want to look. I'm looking at this woman the cover, and I want to know, like, who is she? Where does she come from? What's her name? What's her story?
So she is basically, I forgot her name, but she's a part of these groups, a group of women, a group of tribals called the Hallaki. They are mostly based in North Karnataka. North Kannada, like Ankola and Hulikal. I don't know if you've heard of these regions in North Karnataka. Basically, these are women of North Karnataka who've again not evolved. They've recently started coming into the mainstream, becoming a part of the mainstream society. They were essentially, they very recently got their schedule, the ST status, and what's interesting about these Hallaki women is that they are a very, very hard-working bunch of women. So in the morning, they go to the forest, they cook the meals for their family, they go to the forest, collect firewood, then they come back home, clean up, go to the fields, work in the fields, get their daily wages from the fields. Then after that, they go to the market to sell the firewood that they have collected. In the evenings, they tend to their cows. And taking care of cows is it's a lot of hard work. And then in the evenings they clean their homes and cook again and then go to bed. This is day after day, week after week, no weekends, no Sundays off, except a few festivals. How do you do so much hard work? How do you do this? How do you go through the monotony of all this day after day, week after week? They do this by singing. So they have a song for everything. And these group of women sing throughout the day to not only forget their aching muscles and aching joints, but also to as a part of a sisterhood, because it's just a group of women. All these activities are group activities. And in the process, they've collected a repository of songs which have recorded. They don't really have any written history like most tribes of India. So they have a lot of oral history in form of these songs, you know. They have a song about how they collect mollusks at the beach, or fish at the river, or how they, you know, how certain herbs are good for certain cures, how songs about marriages, death, widowhood, remarriage, a lot of things. And these women, you know, still they have their backs are exposed to sunshine. They still don't wear a blouse. It's just a sari wrapped around their bodies, and these beads of necklaces are around their neck so that it supports the weight they're carrying on their head. You know, that becomes a support system for the weight that they're carrying on their heads. And now, very recently, in the past decade, they've started using these songs to talk about social issues. Because while the women work, the men who have lost their earlier livelihoods of hunting and you know, who have lost their small patches of fields or collecting forest goods and selling it, because these forests have been banned for them. So they just find respite in alcohol and spurious liquor. And while most women are still working hard because they have to feed their children, like the rest of India, the men take to alcohol and lie drunk. So either they die, or they are dead, or they are drunk, or they are invalid. So it's one of the things, and you know, so women have started using these songs to protest, to take these songs to you know, festivals, and travel with these songs, and you know, to reach out to the government that, hey, ban this liquor in this area so that, you know, more of our men come back from the hell that they've been in. And Sukiri Bommagoda, she won a Padma Shri a couple of years ago for these songs that she's been singing and using as a social medium of protest.
What a brilliant way, and I think quite impactful too. So we have discussed the cover, but I'm also quite intrigued by the title, White as Rice and Milk. So it's a very well thought title, because when I was done with the reading, I was like, wow, it makes sense. But for our audience, would you like to tell like why this title?
Of course. So one of the tribes in the book is called the Kudumba tribe. A little introduction about these Kudumba tribes. The Kudumba tribes are a part of the Nilgiri Hills. Nilgiri Hills generally have like 4 tribals, and this is one of the most you know, most backward of all tribes. Now the reason they've very recently, like only in the last few years, they started emerging from the deep forest and becoming a small part of the mainstream society. And the reason they were subject to terrible treatment by other tribes is because they were known to be sorcerers. Now, sorcery is what they practiced apparently in form of medicinal herbs, because they had immense knowledge of herbs. And if they did not like somebody, the other tribals, especially Badagas, who they have a rivalry with, they would just infest their food, or just spike their liquor with all these poisonous substances. They were also known to be, as far as my research goes, they were also known to be, they would take forms of bears and lions to kill other people. But then these are of course myths and legends, I don't know how to prove them. In fact, it's such a closed-up society that even today, a lot of researchers have gone down to try to take down these herbs, because they apparently have cure to AIDS, they apparently have cure to diseases like leprosy and a lot of other things. But then they refuse to reveal it, because they're very, very protective of their tribe, because they've been meted out years of ill treatment by other people. So they're very protective of themselves. And generally, like if a Kudumba passed through other villages of a Toda or a Padaga village, usually everybody would just go indoors and they say, hey, a Kudumba is coming. And the Kudumba was also one of their priests. They were used as black magicians to come down and take animals away from their fields, or to keep animals off their fields, or to keep insects off their fields, or to keep bad spirits off the fields. So, but all this had to be in isolation. Badagan and Kudumba could not coexist together. Now, Kudumbas then started using the term Alu Kudumba. Alu essentially means milk, white like milk. So they started using this term to sort of clear up their image, that hey, we are milky Kudumbas, like we're cleaner, we're not what you all used to think about. So somewhere like Edgar Thurston, the anthropologist, he discovered that Alu Kudumbas were not actually a specific tribe. This prefix was attached sometime along the way to clear up their image. So that, and then even the Halakis. Halakis are also, they were also they were the hunter-gatherer sort of a tribe. So they also called themselves Halaki, which essentially means white as rice. So that's how the title came up, white as milk and rice. It's essentially these tribals' efforts to become or to sort of clear up their image that has been associated with them for over these last few decades, and that's the reason for the title.
So the tribal communities in India, I feel like not just India but also abroad, all over the world, are loaded with so much knowledge, so much intricate knowledge, and they seem to be more modern and evolved, like you said, that they have cures for so many diseases. So the things that are considered basically, if we talk about the Mayas, if we talk about how they have validated, and got it into practice of premarital sex, and which involves recognizing who your partner could be. So the things that are considered as taboo in our world are also are celebrated and more maturely handled by them. So why do you think that they have not been allowed to develop these geniuses, and what lies ahead of them basically? What do you think?
This is a very complicated, I wouldn't really call it a modern tradition, because it's a very complicated tradition in a lot of ways. Because now Marias, Murias, both these tribes which are from your region, the Dantewad and the Bastar belt, basically is so this tradition is still practiced by the tribes which are living deep down in the interiors of the forest. The village that I went to was almost 5 hours of Kacha road after Narayanpur. So it was really deep down, and for last 1 hour we had to walk it because the cars just gave up. So this belt, so they practice this tradition called the Ghotul tradition. Now Ghotul is basically a sort of a children's dormitory in the center of the village, like a house of sorts, where basically all the youngsters, and I'm talking about when I youngsters I mean adolescent kids between 13 to 17 years of age, before they get married, they get together in the evenings, they dance, they sing, they play cowrie games, they carry out some social activities such as prepping for a specific wedding, or preparing for a funeral, or mending roofs of certain houses, or helping out in fields. So apart from all these social activities, they engage in, there's also a little bit of romance and music associated with it, and in the evenings they end up choosing their partners and going to bed with that partner. These days the girls have started coming back home and only the boys sleep in Ghotul because of the so-called modernization, but back then, and it depends, apparently it's been a part, some villages have never had girls staying in the Ghotuls. But so they end up sleeping together, and you're not allowed to sleep with a partner more than 3 times. This essentially is to prevent pregnancies. Now this is a part of their tradition. And there are other, of course, certain practices where they say it's a very rare, in a very rare occasion, a woman falls pregnant, in the ghudal. But in case they do, and if the boy is okay with it, then they get married. And then if not, they find a person who's ready to get married to her. So it's, that means it's quite a, but generally getting pregnant is looked down upon. So hence the certain protocol has to be maintained. Now somewhere along the way, they started feeling like, how we start taking things, which are part of our own tradition. Say for example, going to a church or going to a temple seems a little orthodox, or doing everyday pujas sounds like what your grandmother would do, not what you would do. A lot of things, they have started associating this practice as primitive. And the community outside the mainstream society associates this practice with primitiveness, because they also started looking down upon it. And somewhere along the way, I think there was a lot of misuse of the ghudal also, because when the Naxals started coming in, it sort of became like a breeding ground for finding youngsters who can join the Naxal movement. So I think somewhere along the way things got diluted and mixed up, and traditions got left behind. But this specific village that I went to, it's still a common practice where women dress up. Now they wear lipsticks, pehle they didn't. But now they wear saris with blouses in a modern style. Back then they would wear just saris wrapped around their body. So yeah, things have changed, but.
Okay, so you went down there, you met all these people. Similarly, the other 5 tribes as well, you did go and you talked to them. So what are they like? I mean, all these forest dweller, indigenous people, what are they like? Were they welcoming, and were they comfortable sharing their stories basically?
The biggest advantage I have in recording these stories is that I'm a woman. Now, being a woman, they often dismiss कि यार ये क्या ही कर लेगी, क्या ही उखाड़ लेगी हमारा, how much damage can she cause us, in spite of being a journalist or a reporter. So that I personally, a lot of people think it's a disadvantage. For me, it's the biggest advantage. I have always used it as a weapon, and there's always been a sort of hesitance. Of course, I mean, you are probing into very intimate details of a family, their family histories, the things that they want to hide. The things even when they're narrating a story, there's a lot that they do not want to tell, because a lot of times they, in their heads, have changed the narratives to suit their version of the story. So a lot gets lost there. A lot of times, they have their own agendas that they want to propagate. Like for example, the Khasis say that, hey, listen, bring the traditional Khasi religion back, ban Christianity in these areas. So all these people had their own agendas while they were giving me narratives. To sieve through that, to skim through that, and then to get to the essence of their lives. To corroborate the story with their peers, with the people around them, to make sure different narratives are matching. All this is a process that I have learned over the years. My journalistic skills have really helped me a lot. And then of course, the added advantage that you're young and you are the biggest weapon is that of silence. Sometimes just quietly listening to them and not asking questions has been really, really helpful. And then they start talking, and at some point they really start telling the truth. So and these people are really raw as individuals. They don't have the manipulations in their conversations like we as an urban society or civilized society do. For them it's like, हाँ मर गया, चला गया, खत्म हो गया. Things are very simplified. The layers are missing. So then to dig through the layers and add your own version and your narrative through the script, that gets That's the most interesting process. So these people are very environmentally aware. Every single tribe has such a deep knowledge and understanding of how their environment works. They only take how much they need. They never take anything beyond that. The Khasis have entire ecosystems in these areas, the forest which are dead, where you cannot take a single thing out. So for hundreds and hundreds of years, these ecosystems, these habitats have been untouched. They are exactly how they are, unlike the rest of the world. For the Kudumbas, they still follow the Shola system of agriculture, unlike the eucalyptus trees which have been planted in the rest of Nilgiris. So they know how to take out honey without really putting the honeys without really killing the honeys or without really harming them. They know how to take only 2 hives instead of 5 hives, like how greedy other honey consumers would use it. So they're still raw in that sense. There is a strong sense of attachment to the environment. They know that this is primal and this is the most important. So I think there's a lot of learning there when it comes to tribals and environment.
So in your book is basically laden with very specific details about their life, routines and practices, as you are mentioning. So what are the things that we could probably learn from their lifestyle and adapt?
We were just discussing this before the session started, the slowness of it all. They just savor everything. They even the Halaki communities, which are so hardworking, it's like they have just turned down the dial. When they're walking to the forest, they're like aware of every step. Their movements are not wasted. Like, when I am trying to clear up the table, I'm like, but every single movement that they do around the table is calculated, measured, and is a part of something that they've learned from generations ago. There's a rhythm to everything. And that for me was even, like especially the Khasi woman, because she had these pots of orchids outside her house. It's a traditional thing for the Khasis to maintain these orchids. For them, it's a very sentiment. It has a lot of sentimental value. How they take care of that stem, each stem, because orchid is essentially just one stem and 2 flowers. So you're essentially taking care of a stem and 2 flowers. So they actually mother it, line it with little bit of sugar so that the ants go through it, and then those little the rhythms in their everyday lives, like the Halaki community know exactly which weeds they should walk on and which they probably need later, and so they shouldn't walk on. Everything is premeditated, calculated, and they're living in the moment. The Kudumbas, when they walk through the Nilgiris, they savor. They when they go up the hill, collect the firewood, they sit down, savor, breathe, take in a lot of oxygen. Then they come back to the village. So everything is. They eat only seasonal food. They drink a lot of local liqueur. They revel in a lot of local liqueur, which is great, by the way. This Polish liqueur is what is bad. But then, I'm sure you all have heard of Mahua, which is from this region, and now it's become an international. It's getting marketed like that. But then, I had it too, and wow, like it was magical, And the Shillongs, they have, all the probiotic stuff that we talk about. These people have been doing it for generations. All the food they've been preserving, every single thing. I mean, it's a way of life that is most conducive to a good, healthy daily lifestyle.
So, doing everything mindfully is my takeaway. So, I'm sure during your encounter, research, you must have some extraordinary experiences at really astonishing places. So, I would really like you to mention one that has impacted you the most.
I think my conversation with the Konyak tribe. This gentleman, the Konyaks were basically the headhunter societies of Nagaland. Now these Konyaks until the 1990 used to head hunts, like the last hunt was in 1990, they used to head hunts, hunt heads and then bury it and hang the skulls outside their homes, because that would improve the virility of the men and the fertility of the society in general. And they were also extremely territorial. This is one community which the British would, there were a few of those areas which the British could never capture, because they were such ferocious warriors and extremely forward in their warfare. In fact, they still manufacture guns. Guns are allowed in Nagaland. Every person can carry a licensed gun, and they make rudimentary guns. And the bullets are made from urinary pits. So where you find a lot of basically the material needed, you find. So people collect urine in certain pits and houses, and the sand is then collected and taken by these people who make the guns. So every person in Nagaland, whether it is a farmer or a labourer, carries a gun, because of course these forests are giant, like they're giant trees, thick, deep forests, no roads for miles and miles together, and of course lots of dangerous animals and hunting is allowed in Nagaland, and that's the reason, guns are allowed. So there's this specific Konyak man used to follow the traditional animist religion of the Nagas, and of course has killed about 9 to 10 people. And now he's converted into Christianity, and Christianity is telling him that, hey, what you did was wrong. So now he's going through a process where he's recalling his past and the pride that he took in killing these men. And then then he goes to the church every Sunday where he's told what you did was wrong. So that constant flux, that state of flux that he's in, which is dwindling between pride and guilt, has completely damaged his individuality. Or and his wife tells me that he gets nightmares at the same time, like he's trying to tell me the entire story with pride. So there is a lot of there were a lot of complicated emotions there, and he still had those facial lines. His teeth were black because traditionally Nagas prefer black teeth, and then the facial lines, each line signified. If you take a head down, you get a facial tattoo, a line. So the number of lines signify the number of people these men have killed. So the fiercest warriors had 15, 20, 30 lines on their faces. So and tattoos all over their body. So it's a community that has seen that's still in a lot of ways is untouched. That part of Nagaland still thinks that they're not Indian. They have their own rules, laws, regulations. They do not want to be associated with India in any way. Like I had one foot in Burma and one foot in India when I was there, because I was in Longwa, which is on the border. So most men who live in India are a part of the Burmese army, and the kids go to Burma for school because the schools are better there. And so there's a king called the Ang, who lives in these, who's sort of like how the Queen of England is, just like a statutory figure. So the king is a figure, and then he has a dedicated opium den in his so-called castle, and he invited us to take a swig of opium with him. Ki chalo, come. And he's So while we were there, they hunted a yak and brought him down. Which reminds me of this encounter I had with some Naxals in Bastar. So they were thrilled that a journalist is here, and then they can, they can take their own agenda across, through me, and they said, please come, join us for dinner. And they were extremely disappointed to know that I was a vegetarian because they roasted an entire goat.
Oh.
So I guess
that's all of my friends right there.
So So these they've enriched me as.
That's nice to know. So I am most intrigued about your future projects. Is there something that you're working on?
Yeah, there's a kids version, like a young adult version, which is getting published with Duckbill of the same book. Then you have, then I've worked on another book, which I've just recently signed a contract with Penguin Random House. I'm not allowed to speak about it though. But it's based out of Calcutta.
I think we are coming to the end of session, but I would love it if you can read something from your book, something that you love,
Sure.
something that you want to share with the Janta of Raipur.
Any specific chapter that you all want me to read from, which interested you, perhaps?
Never handled a book like that.
Honest.
Whatever tried.
I think I'm going to read from the Mandya's then, that little passage where Birsu has a sudden. Birsu was was the protagonist here. Basically, she was the sarpanch of the village that I went to near Narayanpur, like about 4-5 hours from Narayanpur, and she basically is not sure whether she wants to put her child in the ghodul, where she would miss out on schooling and education, or she would want to put her child in a hostel where she could perhaps turn out to be a Naxal, like join the Naxal movement. So she's stuck between the tradition and the modern form of, I don't know what. Birsu has a sudden, so she's just come back home and her daughter tells her that the Naxals have taken a girl away and they've made her a part of their cadre. Birsu has a sudden urge to vomit. She wipes Radha's cheeks and nose with the end of her sari. Giving her some dried fish from a rusted tin biscuit box, she storms to the backyard, alarming the cats. Sifting through the pots, she places one on the fire, stripping the yellow mahua flowers to their usable core. She throws in the dried, sugar-rich petals, stirring with anger as the flames leap up around the cauldron. She can't just sit and watch the Naxals and the police play with the villagers' lives. She had to do something, even if it was making mahua. Throughout its history, the precious mahua liquor has been periodically banned, restricted, accepted as payoff by the army and the police, or stolen and snatched by Naxals. She feeds wood to the fire, throwing in the bark, stirring the mahua pot, stirring till she becomes breathless. She hardly cried even after getting married. She had no time to. She prefers drops of sweat beating her face rather than feckless tears. As the mahua vapors rise from the open vats, Birsu's brother-in-law comes with a sirhana leaf cup, pours out some of the last of the old mahua for himself. The man, who though a man, has no resistance, is sometimes seen chanting spells as a gunya to ward off evil spirits from his patients. But mostly he is seen with a bottle, drinking deeply, for he says, you need courage to sit by and watch things happen. Birsu's own desire to drink the homemade hooch is fraught. Each sip that she kisses lulls her mind and at the same time boils her anger. Her first sip is a gargle, sterilizing. The second diverges the aromas. By the third, she forgets about her swollen knee inflicted by the green uniformed women, the noisy children who make enough noise to scare wild animals away, or even the young girl who was taken away by the Naxals. Birsu is not worried about Naxals, even though she worries about everything. The Naxals are young boys and girls, probably jobless, and recruiting girls and boys from neighboring villages. She is worried that fewer and fewer mahua trees grow wild. They often die too young. She is worried about the numerous storms this year that killed them. She is worried about the miners of the giant companies, which her husband says are not too far away. They will come up into her hills and kill the jungles on which they depend on for everything when they're finished in the valley. Even the police are powerless. So much for a very, very warm welcome to Raipur. I have heard a lot about how evolved people are here and how they've taken these small steps in their everyday lives, from the small NGOs and the associations and the educators. Everybody has been. So for me, and I've heard this over the last 1 week since I told people that I'm going to Raipur. Some emerging authors who are coming up from Raipur. So I'm so glad that Prabha Ketan Foundation is doing what they are doing, SAS Women is doing what they are doing, and spreading the joy and love of reading. I hope you all continue reading more and exploring more and take the love of reading further and further. Thank you so much for coming down, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Nidhi ji, and it was really very interesting to know your journey. मोस्ट इम्पॉर्टेंट थिंग जो मुझे एज अ रीडर लगती है वो ये है कि जो आपने लास्ट क्वेश्चन पे पॉइंट आउट किया था कि किसी भी कम्युनिटी को या उनके बारे में लिखते हुए बहुत ज़्यादा कोशिश होती है रियलिस्टिक भी होना और अपने ओपिनियन से भी दूर रखना, और अगर अपना ओपिनियन नहीं है तो फिर ऑथर कहाँ है। तो ये सब चीज़ों के बीच में जस्टिफाई करना और चीज़ों पे जस्टिस करना उस कहानी के साथ में, I can believe, and yes, definitely, since you are a journalism side का जो approach होता है वो यहीं पर कहीं पे जाके लैंड करता है। तो सृष्टि एंड आपने बहुत शानदार बातचीत की। आई एम डैम श्योर बहुत से सवाल हैं सबके जहन में, और जब भी ऐसे किसी कम्युनिटी और टेरिटरी की बात हो रही होती है जो हमारे आसपास से बहुत दूर है, तब तो हम सबको वो किस्से कहानी सुनने का और ज़्यादा मन रहता है कि कहाँ पर क्या हुआ, कैसा हुआ। It's really very interesting because when we start our journey from one place, so tribes, tribal community जो आज भी जल जंगल ज़मीन में दूर कहीं है, फॉरेस्ट में, डीप फॉरेस्ट में, और अपने रिचुअल्स के साथ, अपने ट्रेडिशन के साथ हैं, और जिनके बारे में लिटरेचर्स कम हैं, उनका कॉन्टेक्ट मेन स्ट्रीम्स के साथ में कम है, तो उनके बारे में जानने में हर किसी को इंटरेस्ट रहता है। पर वहीं कहीं एक मसला भी हो जाता है कि हम उनको दूसरे तरीके से भी परसीव करके जाते हैं। So I believe, and yes, definitely we would love to go through this beautiful book, and ना सिर्फ ये इसमें सिर्फ informations मिलने वाली है, बल्कि मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि facts, figures and general knowledge भी हमारे यहाँ बहुत सारा हम लोग का increase होने वाला है। So that's really very nice, and we had a very good discussion, और ये सब session हम लोगों ने सुना है। हमें खुशी है अमित जी हमारे बीच आ चुके हैं। तो अमित जी, अब वोट ऑफ थैंक्स का टाइम आ रहा है, उसमें हम आपको बुलाना चाहते हैं। सो जनरल मैनेजर हायत रायपुर अमित जी को मैं बुलाऊंगा कि वो आए और प्लीज आभार व्यक्त करें।
Thank you. Very good evening. I've just joined fresh. Welcome I couldn't welcome you, sorry, I was a little tied up. But my name is Amit. I've just moved from Calcutta. There also actually बहुत interesting सी चीज़ है। So I was associated with Prabha Khaitan and of course those books, and the Bengal Foundation भी आते हैं वहाँ पे, so we're engaged into that. So you can say the legacy still continues. और interesting सी बात ये है कि when I was Harkan was also together, we worked together at the Hyatt there, तो वहाँ से चालू हुआ actually. So it's a great engagement. It's for us as well as a brand. Hyatt चाहता है कि the brand engages with the authors, culture की तरफ एक trend. I'm not an author, but I write my blogs. तो personal interest as well to read. I belong to a family of academia, so my father was also a professor, so it engages. So it's good to feel. I thank you, all of you, from my behalf. Thanks to you as well. Thanks to Prabha Khaitan for giving us an opportunity. I will look up for the book, and I will try to read out whatever time मिलता है हम लोग को actually from our busy hour. But thank you once and for all, and I'll hopefully I'll be able to meet all of you in person. 3 weeks old in the city, and know Raipur move through all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Amit ji. And now, yeah, Kalpana ma'am भी आ चुकी हैं। Ma'am, thank you so much. We were looking for you.
I'm so sorry I'm late.
नहीं, please do come. So अब किताबें हर किसी को चाहिए, हम सब यहाँ पर हैं, ऑटोग्राफ भी होगा, लेकिन उसके पहले निधि जी रायपुर आई हुई हैं छत्तीसगढ़ में, और ये सेशन हमेशा उनके जहन में रहे, तो वो हम निधि जी को एक छोटा सा अपनी तरफ से मोमेंटो देंगे। लेकिन कल्पना मैम को मैं प्लीज यहाँ पर इनवाइट करना चाहता हूँ कि प्लीज डू कम, आप आएँ और आपकी दो बातें, दो शब्द हम लोग को सुनने हैं। इट्स रियली वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट। एंड ग्रेट राउंड ऑफ अप्लॉज हम लोगों की मेंटर, हमारी ट्यूटर, हमारी टीचर, हम लोग की सबसे यंग फ्रेंड कल्पना चौधरी मैम। यस, प्लीज डू कम।
First of all, I'm so sorry that today आज के दिन ऐसा कुछ गया जैसा नॉर्मली होता नहीं है मेरे साथ, और ज़्यादातर तो समय का ध्यान रखती हूँ, पर पता नहीं आज नहीं पाया। So Right Circle has been a great opportunity, looking forward to listening to your conversation. And whatever little I have read about this book, and whatever it contains, that is very close to the heart. तो इसलिए भी मेरा मन बहुत ज़्यादा था कि मैं यहाँ रहूँ, और मैं हमेशा होती हूँ। पता नहीं आज का दिन ऐसा कैसा था, कभी होता है, और ये इस जीवन में ऐसा भी होगा ये नहीं पता।
एक अलग तरह से खास दिन है।
अलग तरह से खास दिन है राहुल जी, करेक्ट। इसके जरिए राइट सर्कल, कलम, प्रभा के दान फाउंडेशन भी ऐसे उपक्रम है, उनके जरिए लोगों से मिलना, मतलब मेरे लिए तो शायद स्कूल के बाहर ये सोशल इंटरेक्शन का एक ये साधन भी है, और दूसरा बहुत कुछ सीखा और बहुत ज़्यादा लर्निंग इसके थ्रू हुई, एंड आई मेड वेरी यंग फ्रेंड्स, सो दैट यू नो आई टू फील यंग एट हार्ट। Anyways, that's besides the point. And most welcome आपको रायपुर आने के लिए, और अब पता नहीं रिकॉर्डिंग सुनूंगी मैं YouTube पे जब आएगा, है ना? तो thank you everybody for gracing this occasion. Thank you so much for associations that are very close to the heart. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, कल्पना मैम। आज का क्यों इम्पोर्टेंट है और आज कल्पना मैम को यहाँ क्यों होना था, ये शायद सारे एहसास उमर तो जानते हैं, आई डोंट नो सारे ऑडियंस जान रहे हैं कि नहीं जान रहे हैं, सो वो हम डिस्क्लोज कर देंगे थोड़ी देर के बाद, बट दिस इज रियली वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट, क्योंकि एज अ मेंटर, एज अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट एसोसिएट, एज अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट टीम मेंबर, कल्पना मैम के साथ में हम लोग राइट सर्कल की जर्नी रायपुर में यहाँ पर थे, बट मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि आगे के भी एपिसोड्स में कल्पना मैम हमेशा हमारे साथ होने वाली हैं, यहीं रहेंगी वो। ओके, यस यस यस, सो नाउ इट्स रियली वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट, और बहुत एक अच्छा मौका है कि निधि जी आई, बातचीत हुई, ट्राइब्स पर बातचीत हुई है, उनकी कम्युनिटी पे बातचीत हुई है, और ऐसे जगह में जब रायपुर के एक से एक लोग किताबों को पढ़ने वाले, लिटरेचर और क्रिएटिव फील्ड में जुड़ने वाले हमारे बीच हैं, उस बीच में हमें बहुत खुशी है कि सुजाता जी हमारे साथ हैं। हम चाहेंगे कि सुजाता जी के हाथों हम आज मेमेंटो दिलवाना चाहते हैं निधि जी को। सुजाता जी हमारे साथ हैं, सुजाता प्रमोद देवधर जी, और एक बहुत खूबसूरत सी बात ये है जो सुजाता जी के लिए स्पेशल है, हम अंडरलाइन करना चाहते हैं, उनके पिताजी ने सरगुजा रामगढ़ को कालिदास की रामगिरी मानते हुए रिसर्च किया था 1954-55 में, मराठी में लिखी हुई, और उन्होंने इंग्लिश में इसका ट्रांसलेशन किया था, तो इतने ग्रेट रिसर्चर हैं इनके फादर। तो सुजाता जी आज हमारे बीच हैं, ग्रेट राउंड ऑफ अप्लॉज प्लीज, और मैं आपसे रिक्वेस्ट करते हैं कि आप मेमेंटो निधि जी को। या प्लीज
में एक प्रोग्राम
It's in Marathi and English. My father has done the job. He has written in Marathi as well as in English. But for only people of Chhattisgarh, I translated it in Hindi.
We'll be rooting for you, ma'am. So, I feel like that's a wrap for today. I would like to take a moment and extend my sincerest thanks to Prabha Ketan Foundation for curating such insightful events, both literary and artistic, and so many verticals I cannot begin to tell you. I want to thank Sri Simmons Limited for their pivotal role in promoting our social literary traditions nationwide, and of course Hyatt Raipur for their unmatched hospitality. On my front, I would like to extend a hearty thanks to Miss Nidhi. You were a total delight, all the information, all the facts, on so much empathy, presented with so much empathy. I never thought that I would be so much amused like every second through the conversation. And I must express deep gratitude, of course, and very importantly for all of the audience that are present here. I'm so grateful that you could find some time and attend this session of Right Circle. So today's session has been a real treat. Until next time, thank you. Now I would request you to please come one by one. We can start from there. Please come, take a book and get it signed with.